one of the superpowers is to take dedicated, intentional time outside of the business. And I'm not talking about just like crack open a 12 pack and just pop down and watch your favorite sports team, although nothing wrong with that, but getting completely outside of your world and entering other worlds.
All right, so we are live. It's good to see you here. Did you want to scream like a fangirl, or did you want to just get into the conversation?
Actually, I've been doing that on the inside. It's kind of like a spiritual kegel. You're just like
Screaming on the inside. Well, I have a very new but fast-growing friendship, I think, with Jesse. I'll let him determine the answer to that question. But I've enjoyed initial conversations with you and stuff we've talked about, and I thought it would be fun to get on here and just talk to the people about some of the things we've covered and take it whichever direction. Like I said earlier, the universe or the conversation leads us. We'll go down whichever path of business or life or wherever you want to take it. So I'm just going to throw it out to the great world today in the universe and say, hey, Jesse, where do you want to go with this convo today?
These are my favorite combos, Neil. It's just like sort of this improv philosophy. It sort of takes on a life of its own.
Yes,
And
exactly.
one thing that I've heard, and I'm curious if you've heard this from either clients or your audience. There's all this chatter, more than a chatter, it's approaching a roar, but about the recession and about supply chain issues, and there's all these things that are happening.
Yep.
And there's no question they are happening. I'm sure it's all for our benefit. Just the powers that be.
That's what I hear. That's what they keep telling me.
Always have our best interest.
Absolutely.
And for somebody who's an entrepreneur, it's you're not immune to that. You're not immune to hearing those messages. But if you really look at if a recession is just this multiplication of problems personally and professionally, and if you're in the business of solving problems, then it seems to me that the more problems there are, the better your business is going to do, not from like an opportunistic sort of way, but opportunity, exactly. So I'm curious, what have you heard, or what's your sort of finger on the pulse of
What's the scuttlebutt?
Yeah.
Well, my 411 on this side of the house, because we do physical products, we deal with physical product businesses. Our timelines for physical products have changed, but the total availability is not gone. Now, there's scarcity, of course, and then there's mid-level scarcity, and there's perception of scarcity and actual scarcity, and then there's what we consider to be abundant, and then what other countries or people might consider to be abundant. So these are all very intricate nuances in what I perceive versus actuality. So is product still moving? Can we still get product? Are there still shelves full of product? Absolutely. Is there an indication that necessarily is going away? 100%? Yeah, there's indications of that, but then again, there's a lot of misinformation about what's happening. Is there indicators that it's difficult to get in some places? Yes. But what we consider in America to be difficult to get is very much a reward in a third world country. What we perceive as value in America is very different than the perception of the rest of the world. And quite honestly, if some of that changes, I think it's for the betterment of our culture. So I'm okay with some things slowing down. I'm okay with some resetting. I don't necessarily call that a recession, and I certainly don't want it to ever take on a depressionary state. But then again, this was brought up just yesterday. DeSantis said it very well. It's like a recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose your job, right? And then the whole economy falling apart is when everybody loses their job, right? And so at this point, I don't know that that's really a reality, but there's definitely change, and it feels bad. And change for most people feels bad, right? Because they don't take ownership of it.
Right, exactly.
If I take ownership of it and I see the opportunity to change, and I'm not opportunistic for pure capitalist purposes, then there's huge amounts of opportunity, isn't there?
Always is, and especially the more that the pieces on the board are moving. And if somebody, this is one of the things that I've observed in myself, I see it in clients, somebody who is so entrenched in the day-to-day operations really becomes myopic. They're only able to see and predict things that are in very tight orbits of patterns. And so one of the superpowers, if somebody didn't get anything else from this whole interview but this, one of the superpowers is to take dedicated, intentional time outside of the business. And I'm not talking about just like crack open a 12 pack and just pop down and watch your favorite sports team, although nothing wrong with that.
Netflix and chill.
But getting completely outside of your world and entering other worlds. And maybe that's a hobby. Maybe it's a skill. It happened to me a couple of years ago when I love my life. Things are great, abundant, blah, blah, blah. But I get this super clear, like nudge, this little intuitive thing. And it was get land. I'm like, get land. I'm a nomad. bro.
Land's gonna settle me down.
I
It's gonna
call
kill
it
my
that.
vibe.
I just call it bro. I don't know how you do it, but I'm just like, bro, I'm like I'm a nomad. But the message was so clear: get land, get land. So I got land, and I started just telling the story of what this land was going to become. And I started talking about how we're going to have this permaculture food forest, and we're going to have this regenerative place, and it's going to be like gamified, and there's going to be obstacle courses, and it's going to be a blast, but it's going to be the finest quality food you can imagine. So I just kept telling that story. Next thing you know, I started attracting people who are like the Avengers of
Attraction.
permaculture. Yeah, so they just now
Wait, say that again. The
they are
Avengers of
literally
permaculture.
Avengers of permaculture. These are like freaking real life superheroes who can just make things grow, and they're doing all this incredible stuff.
That's
So
cool.
the reason I share that is because that was a pretty nonlinear creation. I wasn't
Yes.
expecting that. I wasn't looking for that. It wasn't on my, on my journal or anything. But the idea came in so strongly. Now, fast forward 2 years, and we have a legit farm. I mean, I had a friend came
cool.
over yesterday and picked up 23 chickens out of the freezer, and it was like, this is
It's a
really
different experience, right? I mean, I get it because we've done that. I've done that. We're 9, almost 10 years into our process now.
yeah.
We've got the meat birds and the regular birds, and we got the ducks, and we've got the other things, and we've got the 2,000 square foot garden and the heritage seed this, and it wasn't anything that just happened overnight. It's been a
Right.
process
Right.
of learning, and now it's meat birds, and in the homeschool group we've gone around and processed the first set, and we're going to go to the next group and process. Kids are learning like incredible things, right?
That's the
About hands-on and gardening and horticulture and management and lifestyle and all this stuff that people talk about. We're actually doing it every day and still trying to maintain a
And
balance.
these kids are learning about life, and they're learning about
Yep,
themselves,
power of it.
learning communication, all these things. And so
Huge.
I share that as an example because when you have something outside of your business that you are equally passionate about, equally inspired by, it creates all these neural connections that wouldn't exist otherwise. And it's an unfair advantage. You get outside of
It
your
is an
business.
unfair advantage.
Yeah.
And I think this is what's funny and why I pick on it if you follow my newsfeed, is that people want to make fun of us as homeschoolers, but then they send their kids into the rooms with the little round things and put the masks on them and then teach them all this crap. And they think we're the ones that are off and nuts. I think they're crazy.
Right.
Because my kids learn like the homeschooling aspect with the way we run our lifestyle means they get horticulture, chores, time management, they structure activities, they have freedom to do what they want once they do their work. They have time set schedules to certain activities that can adjust, but sometimes you got to stay with it because the animals need you. So you got to go take care of them, and the garden needs you. So you got to maintain that.
And you
And
have there's an actual relationship with reality, not just
a reality relationship. That's a great way of saying it. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a very great way.
Well,
I'm going to borrow that phrase.
It's all yours. I was homeschooled all the way. I never went to school, never sat behind a desk, never took a test, never was in a classroom. And I graduated homeschool when I was 17, moved out. I was very, very proud. I did go back for my master's when I was 20. I moved back home. So I have a master's in homeschooling. But
I've never heard that one before.
the experience of just getting to follow your heart, follow your
Yep.
interests.
Yes.
And I remember telling my parents at 17 years old, we were at the dinner table, and I said, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And they were just like, awesome, cool.
There's such a freedom in that, right? And I didn't get that. My dad was a very hardworking guy, God bless him, and he worked for the one company that sold itself to another, and still in 28 something 30 years before he retired, he stuck with that. And he never really had that entrepreneurial drive. It wasn't instilled in him, but he was a curse breaker. Like we were talking about this on one of the podcasts earlier. He broke a generational curse. And thanks to him, I was given the opportunity to think differently about it. While I didn't come from abundance and wealth, and we had just enough by American standards to be okay, I had to get out and do work. I had to hustle. I was in the public school system, and I still, had a job that I created mowing lawns so I could make some extra money to do the things I wanted to do because there wasn't any extra money. And that immediately taught me the value and work ethic and ability to get things done. And I think that's been missing, and that is, I believe, one of the things that's got a curse literally upon the last generation we've seen. We'd like to make fun of them, but honestly, they just never got a fair shot. They got so much abundance poured into them that now their parents are going to have to raise their kids, and they don't see the problem with that. And I see a problem with that, right? Because I plan to raise children that will become adults who I want to spend time with. Like, I want to be around them. How's that for a weird thought, right? Like, I want to spend time with my kids.
By you acknowledging their unique, like their soul's purpose and the fact that they are unique, beings, they're not here to just, copycat you. There's a lot that they can teach us, and such an irony or a paradox where there's so many parents who want to control their kids' experience to try and prevent them from experiencing discomfort or to provide what they never had, all this kind of stuff. And the irony is these kids end up, as a generalization, they end up getting stifled. And the moment they're able to leave home, they can't wait to leave home.
They blow the doors off of it. Yes, we've met those kids in college. I met them. They go wild.
Right. And as a result of you being just honoring who they are and honoring their path, you spike the odds sky high of them wanting to continue to have a relationship with you.
Well, I feel like I'm stacking the odds. I'm trying to stack the odds in a fatherly figure, and I said this to my girls multiple times. You know, I'm your dad first. Someday we'll be friends, and I look forward to that. But right now, I'm not your friend, right? And so I want to lead you through that. And I have daughters, right? 4 daughters. So life for me has a very different flavor than I thought it would in terms of how to approach the world, and different from the men who have all boys or combinations. You know, all girls suddenly takes the world and changes its perception. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have a very different viewpoint on the world when you're looking at through the eyes of your daughters.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we're going to swing the tangent totally different.
Keep swinging.
Are you familiar with a book called The End of the World is Just the Beginning, Peter Zion?
I am not, but I like the title.
It's a great title. My personal jury is still out on this guy as a human being. I'm not sure how I vibe with his character, but some of the things that he's sharing in this book are very unique. And he talks about basically the end of the American empire, which started after World War II, where America agreed to be the world's policeman in exchange for alliance against the Soviets. And we've been in a slow pulling back process from that, which basically he sort of predicts is going to mean the end of globalization, when the oceans are not free anymore, and now you've got theft and piracy and all this other stuff, and local jurisdictions kind of jockeying for control of the waterways. You're looking at a collapse of globalization. And on top of that, you've got depopulation, which is not the mainstream narrative. Mainstream narrative is humans bad, too many humans, we're killing the planet, so go off yourselves, And the numbers actually say the exact opposite. Shocking. China is about to go off a cliff. And Zion's, one of his theories is that China as a nation state is not going to make it to the end of this decade, which is wild if you think about it.
It is very wild.
So I only share that because, within the scope of this recessionary narrative, and there's all this kind of scarcity stuff, he's talking about the United States, everywhere is going to drop down because of the end of globalization. We're going back to short supply chains. We're going back to local manufactured, local alliances. And he said everything's going to drop, but America is going to drop the least. And so I offer that book simply as a counterpoint to anybody who would like something other than the standard narrative. As far as the guy goes, I don't know. I get the sense that...
Well, I mean, I can see where he's going at, and just from a pattern of behavior and where our country is, and stepping back out of the mainstream narrative for long enough that we've been out for 15 years now, to see the pattern of behavior, both the concepts of depopulation as well as recognition of things that most people don't understand, like waterways being transferred to corporations, and how could you even own the ocean? Who owns the ocean? But they actually own parts of the ocean and shipping lane channels that they control where no one can stop them. It's like, what? How did you get to that level of crap, right? And most people don't understand the intercomplexities. That was broke out of the Maxwell trial, and most people don't know that either. So there's so much that's being hidden that's being awakened in everyone. And I think he's a little bit ahead of that narrative, because I feel very similar that America is actually going to go the other direction, not necessarily a downfall, but almost a Rome of the world. We already take on some of the currency across there. The Federal Reserve owns the dollar, and as a standardization, there's only a few countries that are not standardized. And what do you see actually happening in the world right now? My perspective, and I'm seeing this from my friends who are in other countries, and you could chime in from what you see, but they are like, don't fall, America. Like, you have to come save us. Right. Like Australia and the UK and Canada are like, hey, our countries are like, took our guns, they're taking our freedom. They're like, you are the last bastion of hope. And it's dawned on me the other day that how do you get 100 million Americans who'd be willing to fight, the largest standing army in the world with 300 million guns, to actually become passive in the nature that they wouldn't be aggressive, with civil war or other concerns and fears. And I actually think that it's a turn. It's a turn in which America becomes a more of a world dominating force. So America doesn't fight it, they want it. And the other countries who want it capitulate to America. And we have the new Rome, which, if there's a lot of indicators, including even biblical references, that lead to some of this. And it didn't dawn on me until just a few months ago that there's a real chance that that could happen.
Yes, I'm tracking all of that. And interestingly enough, when Rome fell, by all historic accounts, around 500 AD,
Yeah,
people in Italy still called themselves Romans until
they did.
The 1700s.
Roman citizens. That's
So,
right.
like
In other countries, Roman.
1,200
Yep.
years later, it's like, okay. And I think in this country, I think that what people, like the myth of America, the not fantasy, but the legend of America has
Yes.
just been on steady decline
The
since
narrative.
probably the Civil War.
Yeah.
Because the Civil War was not fought for slavery. The Civil War was fought because the Union States did not want to pay the debt that the federal government, District of Columbia, had incurred, and that's where
Most
they're
people
like,
think that was about slavery. Yeah.
yeah, well, you learn that in a state-run school, and so
That's true. You don't understand the narrative. Slavery was just a way to get out of it.
right. Well, here's what fills me with just so much hope and energy and excitement is the understanding, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, the increasing understanding that there are actually two jurisdictions in America. There is
Absolutely.
the geographic jurisdiction, which is the United States or America, and then there's the United States of America, which is a for-profit corporation based in DC. And so people actually have two citizenships, and they don't know it. There's some great case law on this. There was a guy literally named Gary Cooper, like the actor, and he was in front of a magistrate, federal magistrate, for taxes or not paying taxes. And he says to the judge, he says, "Judge, I would like a judicial determination. Am I an American or am I a citizen of the United States?" And you know what the freaking federal judge says? Says, "Well, you're both."
You're both.
Did you know you had two citizenship? Most people don't know this. So
I did know this. I
if you're
did. Not a lot of people on this
geographic-
podcast might know that.
Most people don't, but that's what's exciting. More and more people are starting to realize this, and
Waking up.
there's plenty of case law to verify it. This is not conspiracy. This is just
Nope.
not talked about. So when you are, as an individual born within the geographic territories of America, you are a United States citizen. You're also a citizen of the United States, and some of this is semantics, but basically you're born completely individual, completely free, and then at birth, if you're born in a hospital, you get a birth certificate, and now there's a corporation formed which has your name on it, but it's in all capital. And then for the rest of your life, they are doing business with that corporation. So all of that requires consent. This country is based on Roman canonical law. One of the precepts is that the failure to refute an accusation or an assertion is the same as consent. So it's like if you and I were at a party and you're like, "Hey, I want you to meet my friend Jesse," but you didn't say Jesse. If you said, "Hey, I want you to meet my friend, his name's Bill." Well, if I don't say anything, everybody's going to think my name is Bill.
Right.
So I have to say, actually, my name's Jesse, and you refute the falsehood at the outset. So what does that have to do with the law? Well, basically, if somebody says you owe this fine, you owe this tax, that's an invitation to contract. That's an offer of contract. And it's only through consent that it becomes valid. So you could just say, "No, thanks, I'm good." And they can threaten and scare you and all this kind of stuff. But absent an injured party who has filed a claim, a verified claim before the court, then there is no crime. And so that's why we're seeing this massive rise in private member associations, private education associations, private farm associations, faith-based organizations, because all of that stays in the private realm. There are numerous amendments in every state constitution, as well as the federal constitution, saying that Congress shall pass no law interfering with the right to contract. So you can form a member association. It could be $1 for a lifetime membership. I would sign a member agreement, and now whatever happens between us stays between us. No need for licensing. You are a 508c1a, which means you are a tax exception. You don't even have to file. Like it's right there in front of everybody. And that's what I'm
Just have to have
finding.
the confidence and not fear to approach it. Because what's the first thing that everybody says when their cognitive dissonance kicks in?
You're
Well,
going
I
to
don't want to get sued by the government. I don't want to go to prison. Yeah, exactly. It's all the fear that we have heard for our entire lives that kicks in. And trust me, I'm not immune to that.
Sure.
But I've made inroads to structure it so that I pay them the least amount possible. And you and I discussed a little bit of like this within legal compliance of the law while still paying something to just make sure I disappear. Not because it's what they feel is owed or what I feel could be a concern, because the end result is while others might be a fear of audit, not that I'm trying to bring this on myself, I'm not actually fear. That's just an inroad to prove, hey, I'm actually Neil.
Yep.
Oh, well, we thought you were this guy over here with the capital letter name on. Nope, that's not me. That's the guy you put on my trust. It was on my birth certificate that you indebted to the corporation.
Exactly.
That's not actually me. I'm the citizen, quote unquote, of Rome, the Republic.
And that was fraud, and there's no statute of
Yes.
limitations on fraud. So the moment you discover
Correct.
fraud, the moment you refute the fraud, then it's no longer valid.
You reject
So-
the fraud.
Yeah, exactly. You just turn down the offer. You know, if we're having dinner at a
No,
steakhouse, yeah, if they come and say, "Hey, the steak is $38,000," you're like, "No, I'm good. We're not going to eat here."
No,
They
no
can't-
thanks. Well, if people will sometimes buy that. That's a conditional thing. Like you've seen this conditional test before. The most recent one I was thinking of was they had a theater full of people. It was happening during the shootings. After the school shootings and stuff and Columbine and whatnot, and they had a theater full of people and they pulled a stunt to get people to go out of the theater and get on a bus to see how many of them would just comply with the order to leave the building and just get onto a bus without question. And very, very few people in the 300-person theater actually didn't get up, get on the bus, and go to wherever they wanted them to go. So think about it. We are conditioned to comply from birth. And they know that because everything we live in is a system. This is why I love to reference The Matrix. Because The Matrix is one of those moments in time where when I finally woke up and watched that, my eyes looked at that whole show. Sounds kind of stupid, but looked at it completely differently all of a sudden. Like I did not realize I was jacked in.
Well, and I think on a some sort of metaphysical level, because consent is required, then I don't find it super useful to get into the details of whatever the latest conspiracy is. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know why I'm here. I know what I'm here to do, and I know exactly how to do it. So having that clarity it affords me the opportunity to be strategically ignorant of anything that just doesn't totally vibe with what I'm excited about. That being said, if consent is required from the masses, then whatever game is going on, they've got to put all sorts of signals out there to let you know what's going on. And if
Oh
you
yeah, they
don't
have to make it feel real.
Right. Well, and if you don't say anything about it, then it's considered consent. And so putting the Matrix out there, having Alex Jones, say all his stuff.
All the controlled opposition.
Right. Well, somebody who sees that and goes, all right, cool, and doesn't change is, again, renewing their consent. But it's so cool when, I haven't filed taxes since 2014. And I got a call from a lawyer I'd given some money to a couple of years ago. And this is not advice. This is just a description of what I found useful. The lawyer calls me, very serious, and he's like, "Mr. Elder, we have an attorney or a IRS agent. They're going to audit you, and you really need to fill out this form." But I'd already put 400 hours into studying the law. I'm like, there's actually no law that says you have to pay personal income tax. If you have a corporation, you've already agreed through contract, so that's different. But I'm a man. You can't tax a man on his personal income any more than you could tax a tree or a cloud. You're a part of nature. So I'd already gone through I had an idea of what to do. So I told him, I said, well, send me over whatever they tell me I'm supposed to fill out. I'll take a look at it. So I get this document, this official document, and dude, it looked like a chimpanzee on ketamine put this thing. Really,
They had one of the interns drop it together with crowns.
4 different font sizes, and I'm like, this is an official document. So, a question on there was, what's your title? So I type in, well, I'm the guy that gets shit done. How many hours a week do you work? Only the ones I want to. What accounting system do you use? Hell if I know. How much money did you make this year? More than last year. And then I got tired. I just sent it back, and I told the lawyer, I'm happy to continue the dialogue once I have clarification about the identity and the intent of this individual who's presuming to have jurisdiction and authority over me and my business. And he freaked out. He said, well, I can't represent you if you're going to challenge a tax code. I said, dude, I'm not challenging anything. I'm just requesting clarification about the identity and the intent of this individual. Because if somebody knocked on my door and said, you have to give me something, I'd be like, whoa, who are you? So I had these 7 questions. He wouldn't ask them because he was, playing the game. So that was last June, and didn't hear anything back from the 3-letter agency, didn't hear back from the lawyer, nothing. Till about 3 months ago, he calls me again, and you'll love this. He said, you have a new agent that has been assigned to your case. I'm like, great, let me talk to
we just went up a little. Mr. Black, the Men in Black showed up, huh?
And I'm like, great. And I'm gonna see if I can find this. This is hilarious. And again, I do have tremendous amount of respect for people who are doing their job. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't think there's any, I really think you'd be hard pressed to find a truly malicious person. I think they do exist, but I think most people just don't know what to do. So they look around and they take orders. But
Just like the people who got up and went on the bus. They just try
Right.
to follow the herd and do the right thing and do the better thing and the good thing and the safe thing and all the other things.
And
I get it.
I'm all about fulfilling the terms of any agreement I'm a part of. So the second, like the split second, I see that there's an agreement that I, Jesse Elder, am a party to that has me liable or obligated to pay something, I'll pay it in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. I'm not a rebel. I'm not fighting against anything. I just am curious about, where's the detail. So I called the agent, and I did this meditation before I called, and really just got like in my heart. And I'm just seeing this woman, imagining her like going to work, feeding her family, doing her job. I just like felt for this woman. And then I called, got her voicemail, said, hi, I understand you're trying to get in touch with me. So didn't hear back. A couple of days later, I get this. Listen to this. This is pretty good.
Hi, it's Ron Stearns for Jesse Elder. I have Reverend Officer Nancy Moreno on the phone right now. I wanted to see if there's a time, I know that you wanted to talk to her, that would be good for you next week. She's looking to schedule something like that. She didn't feel comfortable returning your voicemail for a variety of rules that they have. But if you can get back to me, 512-320-9030. There's a time.
Probably don't need to have his
It's
number.
in the heavy. She doesn't feel comfortable talking to you.
And here's the thing. I mean, if I would hope that she's listening to this. I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable. I don't want anybody.
Yeah.
There's no need for anybody to feel uncomfortable. If you're operating in honor, if you're operating in integrity, and if you're living a life of decency and respect, then you should never feel uncomfortable about anything. So
There's so much to unpack in this conversation. I'm going to pause this for this point, and I'm going to ask you to come back because I think some people on this call are probably like, what? And we're going to have to unpack some of the things we brought up today for the next hours. And so I'm going to ask you to come back if that's all right. And we're going to go through this some more, and we're going to keep going deeper because I know this is an interesting topic. It's one I'm personally very interested in, and I know you are too. From the horticulture to the family lifestyle, and of course, understanding the actual complexities of our America, the one you think you live in and the actual one that's being hidden from you, are big topics. And dude, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some wisdom and some fun with me today. And I'd love to have you back.
More to come.